But hey, everybody out there in Phoenix Rising Women's Group and anyone else that's watching the replay later. I am here with my dear friend, Hengi Hawk, who's coming to us live from Los Angeles. She is a C-level executive, an artist, an abolitionist, and an advisor. And not only does she do all of these amazing high-level things, she also has not one, but two beautiful boys, an 8-month-old and a 12-year-old. And she is balancing all the things in a partner and just an overall amazing human being. And today we get to jump in on a bunch of different topics having to do with, being a mom and the burdens of today, from the hard times to the easy times and all the ones that flow in between, and so many other concepts. So thank you, Hengi, so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
You're very welcome. There are so many pieces to this that, you have a fairly large gap in between your two boys.
I do.
Yeah.
Right. It's ginormous, actually.
Yeah. There's some benefits to that. Probably like your older one can help out sometimes. But you decided you wanted to start all over.
So I feel like my biology decided for me on one level.
Yeah.
And on another level, it's a different relationship I'm in. I used to be married. My firstborn's from my former ex-husband, or whatever you call him. Former husband? Ex-husband? Ex-husband is better.
Whichever one really meets you.
Yeah. Ex-husband is good. Former partner. I like to use the word partner. It's more neutral in a way.
Sure.
And I've been with my current partner for over 10 years now. And, we moved from this interesting spectrum of him not really being into children. And I went, why are you seeing me? Why are we dating? I have a kid, kind of, to moving to, we might want to get married, and we might want to have kids. And boom, we had a kid after 10 years. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool gap, but it's a positive one because my 12-year-old's been talking about wanting to have a sibling forever. And finally he got one. So, and I'm getting older. I felt like, if I'm gonna have another child, now would be the time. And we tried for a good 2 years. It wasn't happening. I just let go of the idea. It was a lot of grief. There was a lot of issues there. But then once I really let it go, as the old adage says, you just drop it and surrender, it's given to you. So that's what happened.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure that there's a lot of women out there that can really resonate with the difficulty of wanting to get pregnant and then not being able to, and all these different emotions that come forward for us as women. Is we can't procreate for whatever reason.
Oh my gosh, it was a lot. And I'm not the person that would normally, I didn't really see myself as somebody that would be really into having a lot of kids. I've always been, one of my main goals in life, one of my purposes, if not the main purpose, is actually to help kids and to support them in healing themselves from different abuses or different things that they've survived, or children that are stuck in foster care, or that are, in orphanages or whatnot. But besides that, on a private level, it's always been maybe I'm not meant to have children of my own, because I want to be really focused on those things, right? Mm-hmm. So life really happened in that marriage before, and then now moving forward to this relationship, being with a partner that went through that scale of I don't want kids, oh my god, they're annoying, to oh my god, I'm obsessed with our child and my whole world and universe revolves around him. It has been a journey. Yeah. It's a journey for me. So those 2 years of trying to reach that point was it went everywhere between hell and heaven on the inside, and truly having a difficult time knowing where to turn, realizing that these conversations aren't really happening as vastly as they need to be. Yeah. Of course, I entered therapy, classical therapy. I have my tools. I have my own personal community of friends, but there's still something missing where these dialogues aren't really happening. The authenticity, or the sensitivity, or the, what's the word? We just kind of need to be more vulnerable about it, to be honest. Whether we are C-level executives or stay-at-home moms or janitors or bank accountants, it doesn't matter who you are in your outer life, in your inner life. This is what most women go through when they can't get pregnant. We tend to blame ourselves. We tend to go down these mental rabbit holes, and then we come out of them, and then we jump back in. Our partners aren't always very understanding. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. There's a whole, I would call it an industry almost, that's just waiting to be unlocked, and how to support women emotionally and psychologically when they're trying to make babies.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for any women listening out there who might be struggling with their partner, understanding how they might feel when they're attempting to conceive and struggling with it?
I think most people, as far as my experience goes, most people do rather than not, because it just is so, it's so different for the woman. I feel like the experience. Um, what I did was I really just got very honest with my closest two best friends. I have one here in Los Angeles, and I have one back home where I grew up in Sweden. And to have them from such vast different cultures and backgrounds, and actual like social relational, like one of them is divorced, one of them is married, for them to bring that energy to me and those reflections was everything. I didn't, in the beginning I felt like I was forcing it with my partner, kind of like really putting it on him, going, well, you're the one that's supposed to be there for me, you're the one that I'm in this with, you're supposed to understand me better than anyone. But when he couldn't all the way, even if it was 95%, it was still not all the way, and it wasn't good enough for me. I was just sensitive, I was crazy hormonal. And I know people get sensitive about saying you shouldn't blame hormones, but a lot of us are extremely sensitive when our hormones fluctuate. So, yeah, I mean, I survived a miscarriage that was absolutely horrific. And that was another thing, that was another curveball that hit us. And so communication wasn't always the best. I'm not going to say that it was great. So to really surrender that, let it go, and move towards my female community or feminine community, however we want to word that. Um, my sisters, my spiritual sisters, was pretty much where I went for support, to be honest. That's
so beautiful.
The true and tested the bond of female friendship. Yeah.
And it's so wonderful that you had them, and I love that there were different cultural aspects to their support and viewpoints too. And wow, like I always think and it's so interesting to me because obviously I don't have any children. I've only had one miscarriage. It was back in 2015, and it was very early on. So I experienced it from a different standpoint of not knowing if I'm able to conceive at all.
Right.
At age,
sorry you went through that.
Thank you. Yeah, at age 41. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and especially after spending so much of my life when I was young, I really wanted to have 4 kids, and like that never like really coming into a space that to transition. But when you have a miscarriage and then bravely stepping forward and being like, I'm going to try again, especially since like yours was so horrific, right? And just be like, okay, like this is a risk that something like this might happen again, and that you're stepping forward and your desire to have a family is so strong that you put yourself in that position.
Is it brave or is it crazy?
Which day, the moment, you're just, it's really a great idea, you know? Just think.
Yeah, I have a take on it. First of all, my partner being someone that hasn't had his own biological kids mattered to him. You know, he wanted to really give it a go. And the fact that he was somebody that really didn't before and then really did after 10 years, it was clear to me as day that this was super important. You know, he's moved through this inner, you know, movement, or this like butterfly effect, right? Where he's free and letting go of his shackles of ideas about children or what's supposed to be, and etc. And some of that was, of course, from his own, probably stemming from his own trauma. But besides that, to try again after a miscarriage is not for a faint of heart kind of person. It's probably one of the most terrifying things that's ever happened to me on a personal level. And that's probably for me the main reason to why I couldn't get pregnant. I really must have had a blockage there. It was just riddled with fear of what if I get pregnant and get attached. And I did struggle with emotional attachment in this pregnancy, in the beginning of it, for sure. It took several months. I had moments where I felt really attached to them and I would disconnect. And it's very unlike me because I pride myself on being a very connected, warm kind of person. And my culture is like that. And I have an incredible bond with my firstborn. And so that was a new journey. It was this whole new terrain of, holy Moses, like, am I really dipping the way I shouldn't be? Is this like healthy for this child on the inside? Is he picking up on everything? Of course he is. Oh my God. And what kind of hormones are flooding him when I'm going through these peaks and valleys, you know?
Yeah.
But he's healthy. He's fine. He's wonderful. And he came out completely okay. Again, a woman, a mother beating herself up for stuff that hasn't even happened, because we constantly expect ourselves to be better than the rest, or better. Like motherhood really brings that title, and like it's like a freaking sticker on your forehead, like you got to be a superhero all the time. But yep, it was hard. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie about it. It's not easy to get pregnant again after miscarriage, unless you are a person that really knows how to let go of things fast and just move into your, you have the tools, inner, outside, and you know how to just move through this portal. And I was pretty alone, because this was pretty much as the world started shutting down, right?
Yeah.
Not the easiest thing
Yeah.
to go through.
No, I've seen a couple friends' journeys that have lost their
Yeah.
children, even just recently, and to see how bravely they've been stepping forward and sharing that on social media and how they've been embraced by people, and I really commend them um, in doing that. And at the same time, I'm just like, wow, like how just like heart wrenching that whole experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, for some women, it's actually not that hard. Let's not forget that we're all a spectrum of people, right? So for some people, it's not hard at all, and for some people, it alters their lives. It just like you become non-functional.
Yeah. I think it also probably relates in part to the stage at which you lose the child in miscarriage.
For some, yes, for
For
some,
some, not for everybody, but for some.
yeah.
For me, like
I've definitely had friends that had in the beginning, like absolute beginning, where people would normally say that, oh, well, it wasn't really a full pregnancy kind of thing. They would grieve it as if it was a 9-month-old in their arms, like, or newborn in their arms. I mean, so I think it's really, it depends on each individual, I would say.
yeah, definitely. I do have an acquaintance who her child came to full term and was alive for just a couple of hours, I think it was. And the PTSD that can come for
Oh
parents
my gosh. Yeah.
from that sort of experience. And I think that's something that's not really talked about often either.
Right. I agreed. Yeah. I think people just don't know how to talk about it, or they don't know how to respond if someone brings it up. There's not enough tools or education for the common person, the common friend, the regular person. And a lot of people carry these things silently, and it's heavy and it's lonely. And it tends to be on the, unfortunately, on the woman's side of the relationship, usually. That's not to, minimize or trivialize the man's perspective, or the partner, whoever the partner is. Shouldn't have to be a man or a woman, but you get my point for the
of
sake of
course.
just conversation.
Yeah.
From the partner's perspective, they're going through it maybe even on a worse level, because they have no control physically over anything. They're not there physically to go through it. They just have to constantly relate to it from the outside and external, and be that support system and hold space. But then who do they have to turn to for support, right? So
Right.
that's a whole thing in itself as
Oh,
well. But for the person going through it, I I don't I can't, that's like a nightmare. I don't know. My mother lost 2 children as well before I was born. My son's actually named after my brother that lived up to 2 years. And one of them was a baby, one of them was 2 years old. So people lose children. Everyday people around us have gone through horrific things, and we just don't know how to talk about it. And some people don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. But we want to be able to have some tools for people to come forth and apply themselves to them, or just open up and honor that grief and make it a little bit more relatable, a little bit more open. Um, I just feel like the Western culture just doesn't. There's no ritual. There's no community service. There's no. It's more like, all right, well, your child passed away. Now you get to deal with the burial processes, or like the decisions, and then it's over. You're sent home, just like they do with women after they give birth. We're sent home, just like that. And there's no. You get one follow-up visit here in North America, and that's it. Like, you're
oh
supposed to be
wow.
on your own, and it's something's really lacking here, for sure.
Interesting. I didn't know that it's just like the lacking support when they're leaving the hospital and stuff like that. They're not just like,
Yeah.
hey, and here's the conversation of just like, what do you do if you're
None.
experiencing postpartum depression or rage or pain with sex after birth? And how long do you wait to attempt to have sex after giving birth to a child? And navigating that conversation with your partner, and especially
Right.
like, did you have a C-section? Did you have a vaginal birth? Was it like, did you get torn all the way up through there? Like, and it can be kind of an interesting conversation for people.
So there are follow-ups. Like, they will give you pamphlets. They will check in with you about certain things. They'll give you and empower you informationally, but it's extremely impersonal. Imagine healthcare system, especially
Right.
privatized one, and the Rolodex of like clientele walking in and out on a daily giving birth. But behind every name, there's this story. Behind every face and body that's birthed another body, there's this whole person, this whole history. Mothers rarely get the care they need. So we need a culture where somebody's nurturing the mama, so the mama can nurture not only her baby herself, but usually the whole family. Like we're left with taking care of our households. We're left with the dwindling careers or whatever. This is a very complex issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you talked about the burden of motherhood in the hard times and the everyday times. I do want to touch on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, wow. I think
You're
I can
like, where
rant
to
about
start?
this. Yeah, I think I can rant about this for hours. But to keep it sweet and short, I am living in Los Angeles. So I'm in a North American culture versus where I grew up in Sweden. It's a completely, for the lack of better wording or terminology, it's a bipolar spectrum. I've never been in such an unsupportive culture towards mothers compared to where I grew up. You get like a year's worth of maternity leave, pay, paternity leave. Like Sweden is like one of the most cutting edge, forward thinking, modern, innovative countries when it comes to that kind of socioculture for mothers and parenting. We have probably among the healthiest work balance life culture as well, versus here, 6 weeks in, you're supposed to go back to work. So going back thinking about my boy's 8 months old now, and going back to thinking about 6 weeks and I had a C-section, there's no way on earth I would have lost my job. So
yeah, because just the healing process, like
how do people,
healing your body is,
so we have these women walking into their offices bleeding, cramping, possibly borderline always fainting, having to be put together, look great, speak well, not being able to speak on like what's happening to them or have anyone to turn to, and then perform. Let's not even talk about performance, which is usually a very masculine energy. You have to show up and you have to like meet these KPIs and hit these target goals, and depending on what industry you're in, but they tend to be overall pretty much the same. So there's this gap here, and I know a lot of people are working and moving towards fixing this issue, having these conversations, but it's still as if it doesn't exist for a lot of lawmakers, for a lot of people, usually men that are in power positions. They have no clue because it's not their firsthand experience, and or they might have a disconnect to their lives or the women in their lives that went through it, because we're taught to just take it. We're taught to just deal with it. Your career dwindles, deal with it. You're the mother, you have to stay home, you're breastfeeding, or you had a C-section, you can't get up and walk the way you used to. We need to change that. Something needs to shift.
Yeah. No,
question is how. Lawmakers, sure. But where do we start the movement? How do we create this shift? Because I think how a mother is treated after she's given birth is the seed and effect into a child's life, into crime, into poverty, into substance abuse, into alcohol abuse, into relational difficulties, bonding, ways of expressing a lack that they might have experienced in nurturance. I want mothers to be able to stay at home and be supported financially. Let's like talk about that. My money is everything right now. You can't buy yourself the postpartum outfits, the food that you need for your child, or milk powder replacement if you're not breastfeeding, or even afford the healthcare or medications. I mean, how are you going to do that if you don't have money, right? And not everyone has a bunch of savings.
Yeah. No, it's really
unfortunate, but
it's a really
it's
a difficult time for a lot of women, especially, there are some women out there that they're single moms and they don't necessarily have the community or the resources or know where to look, right? And if people are really struggling with having those healthy conversations, so many women out there, and men for that matter, they just don't know how to vulnerably step forward and make the ask, right? Because so many people are reactive. They do get shamed, they get invalidated, or whatever. So I think the first step really for everybody is to stop shaming one another, to stop invalidating people for their journey, and rather just be able to step forward in neutral curiosity and be like, hey, how are you, and really meet
Right.
it and be like, what are you struggling with? And then as us in community, like we spoke a little bit about tribe at the beginning of the conversation before we hopped on to record, and how
Hmm.
people are struggling because we're built to be in a tribe, not to be so separated, right? And
Right.
to be able to like have grandparents that once were with us,
Exactly.
even in the same home or
Yeah.
village or whatnot, to support the children and give that space to have us to be able to do the self-care that we need and increase the bandwidth and get the sleep that's necessary for the body and the mind to heal.
Right. I mean, listen, the community thing is probably, well, first of all, the tools that you're speaking of that people are lacking, such as like being curious and knowing how to communicate and be conscious about relating to somebody without shame or expressing judgment. That in itself, if you really trickle back psychologically, it comes from not sitting with your mother or father at home learning these things, or with whatever caretaker you have, or if mom needs to go to work, she's leaving you with somebody she trusts, for that person to have had that background in their childhood and upward to learn these things. Can we learn them later in life? Sure. But we all know that when something intrinsically is in our value system from birth, that usually tends to be our persona, our personality. That's how we express ourselves. That's how we show up in the world with other people. So how are you going to do this if people can't stay at home and relax with their children and really be present with them and teach them these things, and being, supported by community, emotionally nurtured psychologically, and having money at their in their bank accounts, frankly. This holistic model system is missing. And we grow up to be these people that are judging. I'm growing up to be like somebody that's thinking something about somebody versus expressing it and going, I'm here. Let me hold that space for you if you need me to talk to you, or you need to talk to me about something, versus like I had to teach myself curiosity. I wasn't raised to be curious. And that's not because my mother didn't know. She was extremely futuristic for being a single mom of 6 children,
Wow.
having lost 2, which was 8 to begin with, fleeing, the impending war in Iran to Sweden, and because I'm Persian by birth. Um, what happened there was she just didn't have enough time. Can you imagine being stretched that thin by both society economically, as well as needing to nurture X amount of children? Now, not everybody has 6 kids, but even if you have 2, even if you have 1, I have friends that have been latchkey kids. They've never really connected with their single mothers. And that's not because the mom didn't want it, it's because society weren't supporting her.
Yeah.
To take it to that next, what was the other thing you just said? I lost myself. It was the communication tools, and then society. Hi.
Hey, we have our friend Elysia jumping on.
Hi.
She's our biggest fan here in Phoenix.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
She is a mother of 2, and she's originally from Jamaica and immigrated to America. And she actually had cervical cancer while
Wow.
she was pregnant with her second son. And
Ooh,
yeah, and
big.
yeah, and she has her own beautiful journey. Elysia,
Wow.
did you have any questions? I'm not sure if you just hopped on straight away or
Hi, ladies. I was just going to sit back and listen and try not to talk today.
that never happened. No, you're here
But,
to ask questions too and like make
Of
your own.
course, yeah.
well, I breastfed both kids up until they were 18 months. I'm a big proponent of supporter for breastfeeding. So keep talking and I'll see what comes out.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that, Elysia.
Nice to connect.
Yeah. Yes, I always like to give shout outs to Elysia because she was on the first wave of women who were allowed on Navy ships in war zones.
Oh, holy mama.
Yeah, and she was an officer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's badassery right there. One person. Power to you, sister.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's the next level. Yeah, that's next level shit. Wow. Whew.
Yeah, she's
How
got
did
her own.
that feel?
You can
Yeah, I
go
mean,
back and like watch hers if you ever have time. Just listen while you're.
I should. Yeah, I should. I can't wait. Actually, yeah, that's cool.
But yeah,
I can't remember what the other part of the conversation was. I was diving into the tools, but I legit just lost my. Can we just call it mom brain? I don't.
Yeah,
Can we do that?
100%. I imagine mom brain
Coffee.
is the thing, and like, why don't we talk about mom brain for a second, and like how we support one another and our partners, and having the grace and forgiveness and patience that's necessary as we go through these things. We don't necessarily have full on, like literally our brains
Right.
just like
Well, yeah, mom brain is a thing. I think it's biological. At least my experience has been that it's biological. Like I feel nutrients deplete if I don't eat well. Postpartum, sleep was definitely, everybody knows you have to get up with the baby unless you have a sleeping nanny or whatever aids in the middle of the night. Most people can't afford these luxuries.
Yeah.
And a lot of women actually are already depleted at the end of a pregnancy. And that was my experience. I'm projecting from my own firsthand experience, usually, just like most of us do.
Sure.
Just depleted. I couldn't sleep very well. There was a lot of different reasons to why. One of them was allergies. I had like extreme spike in allergies. I was, I've always had asthma and allergies as a child, but as somebody that's worked with a lot of herbal medicine and holistic methodologies and self-healing techniques and done that in my coaching practice, I was like, oh, I got this in a snap. I'm good. I can pick up on this and this and fix this. But it wasn't fixable. I had to really sit and be present through these breathing difficulties, through like lack of sleep. There was a lot of different things showing up. And mind you, we have 3 pets. I have 3 rescue pets too. They're extremely needy and really need to be close. And so a lot of that stuff going on as well. So long story short, didn't sleep. And sleep is the first thing that will affect your brain. It's a physiological reaction eventually. And then add that a child is growing inside of you. There's a lot of nutrition going towards that being. Mothers just, wow, we need like a tribe of people taking care of us so we can have this life growing inside of us, but most of us don't. My man he looked through food services, like subscription services. We would get food sent home. He would have to literally reheat it or reheat food or cook it from scratch. We would batch cook, we would prep. It still wasn't enough because I was eating like, 4 people,
Wow.
So it was a really practically difficult thing. So what happens is I feel like my brain, even though I'm good with stuff right now, it took like 6 months to
Wow.
really be back to somewhat myself. I don't feel fully optimized yet. My brain is still in some kind of like, I'm here too, don't just feed the kids and the pets, feed me. Learning how to put myself first is like the struggle of a lifetime.
Yeah,
But
probably for a lot of women.
I feel like almost all women. Oh, whoa,
Yeah.
that's my girl barking at the neighbor.
Yeah, all women, I think, like regardless of whether or not you have a child, oftentimes that's just our role, and we end up in our communities putting other people first.
Yeah, and why is that? Why do you think that is?
I think it's because we're just built as like there's the aspect of the masculine and feminine energy, right? And all of us have that within, and trying to find the balance, and the feminine being like the nurturing aspect. And so sometimes I think we just get stuck in that space, and we're just like stepping into other places to try and provide support when we feel lacking. And sometimes control, I think, is a thing. And I think that some women sometimes try to control through nurturing, because it can be difficult for us to take a step back in faith and feel like we are actually going to be provided for. So we overreach with poor boundaries to support it.
Right.
I also think it's a part of acceptance though. People think that if they do more for others, that they will be accepted more, because they're missing that piece where they're feeling their own worth, and then they look outside for the worth, for the validation. And so I really think also part of that is, that will to do for others and yourself. You're looking outside of yourself for something that you are missing inside and you need.
Right. I do want to add this aspect to things that's extremely practical, which, I've been blessed with an extremely practical man. And I had to really learn how to move from like the etheric, very airy way of thinking and typical Aquarius on top of it to a very anchored, practical personality. And I just looked at my home and I went, who's going to pick up that blanket that's on the floor? I refused. 1 week passed by, nobody had picked it up. Second week came around, I started getting furious. I'm like, is anybody going to pick up this blanket? And on top of it, there was like a pair of socks. And I went, is this the battle all women have once the children are there? Like, I'm focusing on something else. Can't you pick up the pile of stuff on the floor? So not moving into power struggle about it, but really becoming conscious of like, this is a practical problem. We're both lacking sleep. We're both lacking time. how do we divide this? When I entered back into working, which was about, I think 5 months postpartum, 5.5 months, no, wait, 6 months postpartum, 6.5. And being a C-level person, I have a lot of responsibilities on my shoulders. I can't just, be present if a child starts crying. Like, this is your time, dude. Take the baby. Period. Don't come to me. Like,
period. End of subject.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Men want to tap on your shoulder. I'm like, I don't do that to you when you're sitting and working. So, it really comes down to practical things too. That's what I'm trying to relay. Is that at times it isn't me being somebody that's trying to find my value on the outside, even though that definitely has happened. It's definitely been a struggle in my life. I've had the people pleasing personality, had to work through codependency, a lot of those things. And then on the other end, learning how not to be assertive in a hyper masculine way that society has taught us to be, but really staying with me and going, that pile's really annoying me. That pile's really irritating me. But in the grand scope of things, that pile's going to get cleared up. If I have to wait a month for somebody else to do it, I got to wait a month, because the expectation there is, well, mom's going to pick it up. So what happened was our 12-year-old had to learn how to step up. He had to start taking that responsibility that, oops, my mom's working and we have a baby and somebody's got to walk the dog and stepdad's walking the dog. So I guess I have to pick up this pile that my mom's irritated about and snarls about every time she passes it. He went ahead and did it. So everything always works out in the end, as long as the woman or the mom learns not only where our boundaries are and how we express them, but also at times just relax into things, right?
Yeah.
I think an essence of, for me, was definitely control. I do have to stay really balanced with my masculine and feminine because of how I work. I work in tech. So yeah. I have to, like, right now, tech is leaning that way still, even though women are being ushered into things, it's still leaning very masculine. So even though I'm on the creative communicative side of tech, it's still tech.
Yeah.
So when I approach things at home, it takes a while for me to step out of that work shell or work persona, and I bring that home with me, even though I'm working from home. So the energy is still there. So the pile is the pyre of example of, I don't want to burn myself at the stake, but I don't want to burn you either. So let's just be friends, and let the pile be until somebody.
I think my mom sometimes, like when I was growing up and things just got to be too overwhelming, we just had to say sayings like, is it health or safety? And if it's not, like, life, like health or safety, like, just let it go. It'll get done when it gets done. And yeah, thank you. And just prioritizing from, like, what is actually, like, really a priority.
Right? Health and safety. Yeah. I'll keep that with me. I'll put it up on my fridge. Health and safety.
Health and safety. Has this pile been here for so long that there's black mold on it? It has now become a health and safety issue. We have to clean it.
Cockroaches, mold. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't gone that far yet, but
that's one of the benefits of you having a 12-year-old, because that's a really great age for kids to get to step up and learn responsibility. And
for sure. For sure. Yeah.
On so many levels important.
But we still struggle. I'm not going to make it sound like it's easy. There's definitely the struggle here, like legit every day. Who's going to take care of the dishes? Well, I put up the schedule. Is he following the schedule? No. Does mom have to nag about it? Yes. I don't want to do the emotional labor, so I charge $20 every time somebody makes me. So I started implementing some hardcore money techniques, and let's see where it takes me. But it's working for the big guy. So he just paid me $100 the other day. I mean, just pop it into my account, man. I did some emotional labor for you. I'm not your coach. I mean, really tough on him, but only postpartum. Everything will go back to normal when we have some milestones that we've hit. Yeah.
Super funny. Yeah. Speaking of postpartum, like, a lot of people have started to talk about postpartum depression more, which is great. But I found that not a lot of people acknowledge the postpartum anger and rage that can occur. And as women, I feel like we don't necessarily get to talk about the fact that we too also have rage. And so, like, how do we hold that? How do we hold that space? And what would you like to bring to that part of the conversation?
I'm sure you're already picking up on my suppressed rage.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my God,
in this interview. Yeah. So there you go. To me, it's been micro things. So the microaggressions that I would take personal, like, why are you leaving the pile? Like, it's going to annoy me. Why are you making me like coach you about this thing? You can just hop on Google and learn it. When I'm exhausted from not sleeping all night, breastfeeding, getting up, having to change a poopy diaper. I mean, little dude wakes up at 4:30, stands on top of me and goes, ugh. That's how he wakes me up. You know, he just turned 8 months old and he grunts in my face. Like, okay, I love you, but Jesus, like, can we just slow down? So it's been like, 4:30 a.m. wake ups or 5 a.m. wake ups have become the norm. So when somebody asks me for something extra, do I get a little pissed off? I'm like, yes, I do. Let's not pretend like it's all rainbow farts and roses here, because actually that's how it was with my firstborn. I went through probably the toughest chapter of my book of life, or the second toughest, when I was moving through that. My son was 1 year old and I was pretty much exiting my marriage, and I made that decision and I lost pretty much everything overnight: home, job, income, roof over my head. And just took my kid and pretty much ran off for a while because it was that bad. And everything's fine now. We're amazing friends and co-parents, but it took a while, a few years.
Yeah.
And to really bring it to the forefront here is that back then, even though life was really tricky and difficult, it was rainbow farts and unicorn and whatever you want to call it, because my mindset and my energy was in a different space. I was in my mid-20s. I could take a lot of shit, and I did a lot of extra laboring for whatever reason because I just didn't know any better, and I was handling it with grace. Versus now, when you come into your own self-empowerment, and I would say, I dare to say, I don't want to be an ageist, but with age as a female, I tend to be a little bit more wise about my energy and about my time. And most men are like that. They literally charge for their time. And if they don't charge for it, they pretty much expect something back, and I don't want to walk their walk, but I want to meet them halfway, pretty much learning how to speak their language, going, you're going to ask me to do X, Y, or Z, or you're asking me in a passive way by leaving the pile there, you're going to have to pay for it somehow. And in our household, it's taken on like actual payments. Like, I just started this. It's a bit of an experiment, social, financial experiment. And he just cackles about it and cracks up and laughs. He's like, I'm going to be broke by the time we're done with this experiment. I said, well, maybe you should just learn.
Maybe you should just pick up the pile.
Pick up the pile, or he's an amazing partner for sure. But I do feel that there has been a little bit more anger from my end this time around after this pregnancy. If it's hormonal, if it's age, if it's societal construct creeping in on me, if it's me becoming more self-aware, empowered to not accept certain things or putting up stronger boundaries. Maybe I'm just plain old exhausted and I don't want to deal, right?
It's probably just all of them. All of them together.
Anger can be, for me, it's been a healthy part. It's been a healthy part of me stepping forward and being like, I just really need to honor that I'm really upset right now. Like, I need to go for a walk. Leave me alone. Or I need to create some space to express myself in a healthier way, or hop on the phone with my friend that really understands me 110 without me having to explain things.
Oh my gosh, so, yes.
that's my main anger issue. It's like I have to explain things and pretty much coach at home. I'm like, bro, I'm already doing this career-wise on the side. I don't really want to do it at home. So anger is healthy. I welcome it. I don't think women should press it away. It's only when it becomes lopsided and threatening. That's when or if it starts consuming you too much from the inside and starts causing health issues, that's when it's something we need to take a look at with somebody else, such as like a therapist, or we need to call in someone that's been through their journey on their own end and can help us with tools. But I do think anger postpartum is pretty normal, especially with everything looking the way it looks like right now in society.
Yeah.
I'd say you're probably unhealthy if you don't feel a little smidgen of anger at some point. If I dare be a little bit judgmental about it. We've been taught to be good girls. We've been taught to sit pretty. We've been taught to look a certain way, speak a certain way, or we will not be seen as attractive, or we will not be seen as a good mama. And that's all bullshit. Throw it out the window. Out this window, far high up. Throw it out. Let it crash.
Yeah, no, for sure. I tell people when I'm coaching them for the connection coaching and everything else, like, the key to emotional regulation is really to honor the entire span of human emotion and just not get stuck in it. Like to
Right.
not invalidate yourself for feeling the way that you're feeling. Like if
Right.
if you're experiencing it, then you're probably supposed to. There's some reason
Right.
that that it's there. And
Absolutely.
it's just like, it's acknowledge your triggers. Don't get mad that you're getting triggered. Just be like, hey, like when you have a trigger, that means there's something that you get to work on in yourself, right? Not that there isn't
Right.
an injustice or whatever happening, but the fact that you're becoming reactive from whatever you're experiencing is something that we get to work on. And there's so many different layers of epigenetics and everything else that lays in on that. Not just
Everything.
about here, but like, yeah, that's the first step in an attempt. Elysia, you've been off your mute for like 2 different times. I know you've got something to say over here. Like, my dear friend, have you experienced that when you had your kids a long time ago? Did you experience postpartum depression or rage or anger?
No, but one of the things I wanted to talk about is, not everyone has, like she was saying, she had to leave her marriage. Not everyone has that support at home, and um, sometimes the perspective is not even there for the person to even say, I need to be mindful for myself. And it
Right.
takes someone from the outside, like a friend or somebody seeing how you're behaving, to really gently just pull you aside and say, how can we help you? And knowing that mental health during postpartum is not something to be ashamed of, and not feeling ashamed of who you are and the fact that you're really trying to get acclimate back to your body after pushing out a heavy 7-pound or 6-pound baby. And so I think one of the things I wanted to point out is that sometimes we don't even know we're in it.
Yeah.
And it takes that other person.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple of times with friends, not friends, just seeing and observing someone more than once and just saying, how can I help you? And when that person just realizes that they're being heard, my gosh, that just shifts their energy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I have to say, it took a few times for me to check myself about that. I really didn't think I was experiencing any form of postpartum. I didn't even think anger was a part of postpartum. I thought it was mainly depression, anxiety, sleeplessness, hormonal fluctuation, physical things. I didn't attribute anger to that. And I just think most of it for me was to really look at it from a societal, the fact that I was at home nonstop. We weren't allowed to go places. We had to wear masks. And long story short, like my life, having a baby around this time in society, I thought that was really what it was that was making me really upset. But I think it's like you said, Elysia, it's like this, all of it, right? Everything starts trickling in. But to
Yeah.
be called out is probably key, specifically if it's somebody we trust or we look up to or we have a nurturing relationship with, for sure. Unfortunately, it tends to still be women. It tends to still be those that have either gone through it themselves or somebody that has a high level of empathy and insight that can kind of pick up on the signals. It's almost like a privilege, to be honest. It's a privilege.
One of the craziest thing, if you don't mind me sharing, when I was working with the Canadian Navy, one of the things I really admired about their outlook on people having a child, they give them an entire year off. Where
we did
in our military, it's 6 weeks, and then you go back to work. And so within a year, your body can get back adjusted and you can do the mindful stuff to get your body back into that healthy state. So I guess one of the things I'm trying to point out is take time. It takes at least a year to really get your body and your mind and your soul really wrapped into the new you. And you said something that really struck whatever the phrase is in America is, struck the chord, struck the nail on the head, or whatever the book.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, Elysia, you went on mute. Hold on, honey. Too many buttons. That happens to me sometimes. I just hit all the buttons.
I love that profile picture. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's so good. Elysia, you're still on mute, huh? You're still on mute. Elysia. She's I don't know if she can hear us. Maybe she hit a button.
I don't know what happened.
I
Maybe
don't
it's a
know.
disconnect. It's silent.
We can't hear you, my dear.
I hear you.
There we go. Yeah, I think it connected through. It must have connected through your car or something. I can barely hear you.
Bluetooth, probably.
The Bluetooth situation is happening. It's too quiet.
Oh,
It's too quiet.
Oh, that's better.
well,
There we
it
go.
wasn't meant to
You're
be.
fine. You're finally back.
I can't hear you at all.
We can hear
Oh,
you
no.
very well.
We can finally hear you though.
If you want to write in the chat or something.
Yeah, maybe she's trying to write in the chat or figure it out. But she did bring up a point about the body snapping back, which is one of the things that you had
Right.
brought up.
Yeah, girl.
So yeah.
There's a whole industry out there. You know, a lot of women on Instagram, for example, writing in their stories or sharing in their stories how people would reach out directly in their private messaging system, DMs, and offering them like programs to work out or products and pushing them on these mothers that are just like given birth. It's like we're not even in that mind state, and we're being taught and pushed to pretty much enter this body rehab system ASAP. We have so much pressure in culture, and let's not even talk about how social media perpetuates that ideal of this perfectly curved woman that snapped back and like I don't know what, like 6 weeks later you're supposed to look like a supermodel, better than you were before you got pregnant. It's like, bro, we know you had surgery. You need to slow down, first of all, and second of all,
you're wrong.
why are we talking why are we even talking about how a mother's body is supposed to look like after giving birth? I mean, everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
And there's shaming on both ends. If you snap back fast enough, naturally, you get shamed, like I did when I was younger. And especially living in LA, everybody thought I did have a bunch of surgeries, which I didn't. I was just 26 years old, and it just went very well for me. And I walked everywhere. I literally didn't even have a car. Like I walked and took the bus everywhere, which is an anomaly in LA. And back then, at least, I would never not have a car anymore because it's crazy. Would never do it again. In LA, like what?
Different time. I understand.
Worst transit system ever. But nevertheless, now fast forward, things aren't moving as fast when I'm older. My body is just like, my stomach is like, oh my God, tore up, like muscle separation, wall, abdominal wall. I mean, horrible looking for many months. And I found that voice creeping in. I was like, am I supposed to look a certain way? Am I supposed to have done this and this and this? And all over social media flooding in. I really had to take a step back and even pause that, turn off my notifications for my mental health. I was like, I'm just not focused on that right now, and that's okay. But it took a lot of self-coaching. And if someone, as I would call myself strong as a person, has this creeping in, I can't even imagine if somebody that's not really in the state of mind that I am, or have done the work I've done, or maybe doesn't have the support system. Can you imagine being told how to look like when your body for 9 months has stretched and moved and made space for new life to grow, and then you have that life exiting you and all the things you're going through to just slowly regenerating yourself? It's impossible. Why is this culture so toxic? Why are we being told to snap back fast and even at all? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's just like why would your mindset be on being sexy, quote unquote, and trying to like pull somebody in because you're trying to snap back, right? And when you're trying to support this infant that is consuming everything.
right. It's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, it's like it's more about fostering, I feel like, self-love and acceptance. You're like, this is who I am, and helping foster. It's like if you have stretch marks from having a child, like those were well earned. You created life in combination with your partner that helped facilitate that. Like that, there is no greater miracle on this planet than that of which creating life.
Right.
And so like those marks, those stretch marks that some people are trying to reduce or they're feeling really insecure about, like those are like sacred marks on your body of the journey that you and this being created.
Right. But let me take it a step further, if I may.
Of course.
I had these stretch marks before I got pregnant. Those stretch marks are allowed and valid to be on your body without anybody's opinion whatsoever.
100%.
We're supposed to be the way we are, the way our creator created us. I mean, I'm a believer in Almighty God. In my experience, this God has created me. I don't keep my heart beating. Something is keeping my heart beating every day. That power thought that I should be looking this way. Why should I alter that for anybody else's pleasure? That's where I'm coming from. Now, if a woman decides to do so because of her own feeling about her body, that's a whole different thing. But to do it for other people or for society's expectations, red X from me. I'm just like, we need to stop. We need to stop. I think really social media is probably 90% of the problem. Like it's, at least within the conversations where I'm having in my own community, personal community, is that a lot of women are starting to feel severe anxiety about social media, really perpetuating this perfectionism that doesn't really exist in the real world, but with filters in Photoshop, as well as a lot of people that gain access to massive followings, they have all the support system. They have all the money and time in the world to be working out, 6 hours every week to perfect their bodies versus, the regular woman out there. She's hustling just to put, food on her table, roof over her head, keep her utilities on. She has to run to the grocery store. She can't afford a grocery runner to come to her door or subscription box food love. So there's like this whole thing where people can't see the real woman. All we can see are these, and let's not even talk about how extremely age focused society has become. Everybody's supposed to look like a 20-year-old, sorry, 12-year-old, a 20-year-old. I have a 12-year-old. He's in my head.
Most of your mom, Raymond, so it's totally fine.
20-year-old, I mean, and women just we just pretzel ourselves and distort ourselves to try to look a certain way. And I'm not a big fan. I'm all about the crone. I love older women. I love their wisdom. I love their bodies. I love hearing about this map of the body that she's holding and all the things she's been through and what that says about her book of life and what I can learn and how I can associate and grow from that. I mean, our society is also lacking support and love towards elderly, and bringing that into the center piece of conversation is pretty important moving forward.
Absolutely. It's just, there's so much about, let's make it about health and wellness when it comes to our bodies. And that brings us to another topic in regards to like motherhood is pelvic floor physical therapy and like the pain that some women have with sex after pregnancy because of like the tight muscles and the tight fascia and the things that have ripped. And like, how do you have that conversation and have that self-love and patience and asking for support and communicating that with your partner if you are in fact experiencing pain after giving birth?
Right. I mean, maybe Elysia has more to say about this particular portion of the discussion. I'm a C-section mama ×2. I really wanted to attempt a VBAC, but I wasn't supported by my medical team because of having, I don't even remember the name, but I had a uterine wall bleeding that was happening where we pretty much thought I had a twin pregnancy, and one of them, I pretty much had a miscarriage during my pregnancy.
Oh,
and
wow.
then baby boy that's here is stuck, and he just fought through everything with me. But to really compress the stories, I don't really know how to connect to that part of postpartum as much as I would like to. I didn't experience a lot of like sexual dysfunction postpartum versus what I would say maybe a dip in my drive, feeling like I want to or need to have sex. But that's pretty normal after a C-section. And mine was the worst surgery I've had in my life, unfortunately. I only have 2, and I've never had any other surgeries. But my, what's it called in English? I guess where the trauma comes up, I lose my words. My anesthesia wore off on half of my body during surgery. And I spent I don't know how long. Yeah, it's like medieval torture on a very skinny frame. So I'm pretty skinny, tiny chick. And on top of that, just heavy levels of meds being stuck, not being able to go into my veins. Long story short, I had too much trauma to even think about sex. I wasn't even like in that space of let's get nasty. Like, shit, I'm trying to like make sense of how I'm even gonna walk ever again. So I was in bed for 30 days. Afterwards, I couldn't really breathe. And so my situation is maybe a little bit, it's like 1 in a million apparently that have to go through surgery without, it's pretty much like setting you on fire and putting you at the stake and going, you're a witch. and you're just standing there going,
Yeah, here
nobody
she's
can hear you.
I can hear
You're under enough anesthesia to not be able to talk, but you're
Oh
feeling
my goodness.
everything.
Oh
So
my
it's
God.
horrific, horrific. But I mean, again, my faith in God and that community for me is what brought me back to life, and an amazing partner by my side. So, and baby boy, you know, little person next to me, you know. So bringing that focus back into how do we, and so I'm still working through that trauma, but how do we talk about sex postpartum when I haven't necessarily had that painful experience, but more so the dip in the drive.
Yeah. Well, healing
Have I heard of?
like
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And the scar. But I think most of my girlfriends have said something about, I would say all of them, their mothers have said something about that things don't feel the same down there. And sometimes they don't feel like the sensations the same for them. It takes time for a woman's body to pull back together again. Some of them feel like they're fearful of getting pregnant. They don't want to go through that and push another baby out. I've heard of dryness. I've heard of hyperlubrication happening. I've heard of bladder leakage issues, control issues, feeling embarrassed about those kind of things. Orgasms not being as strong or as delicious as before, so it doesn't feel like sex is juicy enough that they don't even want to attempt it. Relationships happening where, you know, suddenly you're not just you and your man, but now you're parents, and things shifting on that level, so it affects the sex. Looking at him in a new way, or partner, her, whatever partnership you have. So this whole, you know, goodie box we could unlock. But pain for me was mental. It was, why do I not want to have a bunch of sex the way I like used to postpartum? Being in a different age group now, also my doctor telling me hormones definitely matter, and my hormones were completely different this time around than with my first pregnancy, and accepting that was huge. It was just like, stop shaming yourself, and you stop invalidating this experience, stop wanting to be something you're not. And I just have lucked out with such an amazing man. He's very Swedish. He's extremely like I guess we would say feminist, for lack of a better word. He's very forward and just held that space, and the most patient person ever. And I'm like, you know, I've heard of men, you know, cheating, like, you know, wanting to do these things just because a woman couldn't be present sexually. I mean, it's the most ridiculous shit ever, you know, to be fully frank, but it happens. Men cheat on their women during pregnancy. Men walk out on relationships, and within the first 2 years is probably the hardest years to keep it together, probably because people aren't talking about that. The sex falls apart or feels different. Alifa, you might have more to say about it than I do. I feel like I've already hogged the conversation enough, but
Oh
please
no,
share if you.
this is your
You're doing
interview. I told you I was going to try not to talk.
You're doing great, Hengi. We really appreciate everything you're bringing forward. And yeah, Elysia, you had cervical cancer during your second pregnancy, and
Wow.
and you still managed to stay alive and give birth to your second son.
Yeah, I experienced the pelvic floor issue because the agreement with the doctors was, as soon as I had the baby, I had to have surgery within 4 weeks after. And so I pushed out the kid and then did the hysterectomy right after. And so
Wow.
my trauma came from the lack of support from my partner, and the fact that I was laying in bed nursing a brand new kid and having a toddler and trying to be a mom at the same time. And so one of the things that I ended up doing was do electrical, it's almost like biofeedback. I went, I recognized that I wasn't having much sensations down there. And so I went in and got therapy. So I went in. I'm one of those people, if there's something wrong, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm ashamed of it. I'm going to go address it. And so I wasn't ashamed about going to a doctor and say, look, I can't feel anything down there. So they did a biofeedback hookup where I can see the movements as they tell me to contract, do a pelvic tilt or something like that, because I couldn't, my brain synapses had completely disassociated because of the trauma.
Interesting. Wow.
And so I guess one of the things I would say, and I still experience a lot of my back issues that 10 years later, my son is 17. 17 years later, I still have my abs are the weakest ever. My core is gone. but I had to do a dummy-oplasty a year later because laying on my side, nursing my son for the 6 weeks made the fat literally just stayed on one side of my body and looked like excuse my French, it looked like shit piled up on top of each other. It was just I have never seen it in my life. And so they went in and cut it out, but then they snipped the nerve. And so my nerves were
Oh
also
no.
severed.
Oh my God.
And so,
Oh wow. That's
yeah,
some bad luck with the surgery. I'm sorry.
yeah. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to shame myself. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? And that's when I started doing figure competitions. I started working out and just loving on my body. I'm like, you are going to get through this. And I just started doing stuff and just convincing myself. I have several spiritual guides inside of me that takes over sometimes. They're like, oh, hell no, you're not going to go down. So they activated and just encouraged me. And then I had that I believe in God, and God puts the right people in your path. So all these people started showing up in my path to encourage me to do bodybuilding. It's figure competition, because not bodybuilding is when you're really looking hefty. Figure is you're looking just like you are now, but just really sculpt and feminine. And so it really restored my perspective of who I was. But really the serious thing is that self-love, really trying to say, you know, recognizing and speaking the truth to yourself. I don't feel like I love myself. And then say, what are you going to do about it? How can you go about helping yourself feel love again? What people need to be in my life to help me, to remind me or keep me accountable if I feel down? What can I do myself to get out of it? And so that was my mentality. And now I'm just when I recognize that I'm going down, I'm like, I'm gonna go shopping, because when I go shopping, I can talk to people waiting in line and all this crazy stuff. And so I really call my son likes to say it, I call myself to the carpet. I think that's what he says. He's gonna call me on it, because that's the teenage phrase.
Yeah.
That's one heck of a story.
It is what it is,
Wow.
right?
So this is like a testimony to how resilient women are, and we are our own best advocates and coaches and healers and therapists. We need to mother ourselves first before we mother other people. I mean, look at you, like, holy Moses.
That's what I was going to say when I lost touch. You said something that when you look at yourself for where you are. You were 25 and that's what you can do. And now you're I think you say you're 32?
38.
38.
About to be 39, yeah.
I know, she's beautiful, looks young all the time. But, gorgeous all the time, inside and out.
Yeah, so where you are now, you're more wiser, and you're like, I'm not going to waste my energy telling them to pick up the stuff, because now you're more aware of how to care for yourself and not get upset. You know, you pick your battles. And so
exactly,
one of the things I really want to encourage women when they're in the space and they feel like they're alone is, you are where you are now, not where you are in the past. So continue trying to be present and really work on the present person.
That's a good one. Bringing us back to the presence. It's also tricky, you know, because sometimes when you're a mom, you're in this loop of at home doing laundry, cooking, doing the same thing every day, same thing every day, and people don't understand how that affects your health and mental well-being. And just like going to the store, standing in line and connecting with the teller or people, it could be huge for a Mother's Day. It could be the make it or break it kind of thing for the camel's back that day, you know.
It's like, oh my God, I got to talk to an adult.
That's why I do it. That is why I do it. That is exactly why I do it. And I just went to Michael's to buy something, and this couple just was looking at my dog, because I have my service dog, and they started talking about the dog, and that they just put their dog down yesterday. And I was like, oh my gosh, what can I do to help you? And I was like, I'm a painter. I can help you paint a portrait if you want. And they were like, oh my gosh, just feeling validated and supported when they're grieving was just so, that's what I do. I call it
You
little.
just walk around and sprinkle your magic on people.
That's what I was about to say. I sprinkle my
What?
magic. I do that all the time. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
No, that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
just really briefly, I would like to touch base in regards to the whole like pain with sex issue. As a woman who has not had children, from the standpoint of like, and we're gonna wrap this up soon because I know Hengi needs to go, and she's been amazing with, and I appreciate her time. Is that if you have not had a child, know that it is totally normal. Like there are lots of women out there that also have pain with sex.
Yeah.
And that there are different things that you can do to help yourself. And pelvic floor physical therapy, where people manually work inside of you to release the muscles, to release the fascia, can be really helpful. I had pain with sex for a lot of time over the course of my life due to different situations that happened to me between being sexually assaulted and also my low back surgery. And so when you have low back surgery, sometimes like you have your pelvic floor that's compensating and supporting you. And so you get a lot of relief in your low back and any sciatic pain through having internal work done. But I fold that into the standpoint of pregnancy, because if you're a woman out there who hasn't had a child yet and wants to have a child, you might be having some fear coming up about the pain that you're already having with sex. And the idea of pushing a child through your vaginal canal when you're already experiencing that kind of pain could be terrifying.
Valid, completely valid. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And if you've experienced sexual trauma or whatever, and just like having that kind of like large beam that you're suddenly pushing through that area where you've already experienced some sort of trauma to one level or another, I feel like is a conversation a lot of us also don't have. So to just kind of like, put that in your pocket, that if you have experienced something like that and you need to have somebody to talk to, please like reach out to a coach, a counselor, a friend, or even if you're listening right now, go to our group for Phoenix Rising Women's Group, where you have a safe, non-judgmental space to share your personal journey without shame or invalidation. Ask for support. There's a lot of really amazing women on this panel, like in this group from around the world, who I have no doubt would be more than happy to step forward and support you in whatever journey that is.
And if that makes anyone make you feel better, it's really common for most of us that are assault survivors, that things come up for us, whether it's through sex and partnership, outside of partnership, solo sex, and or when we're giving birth. It's like probably across the board, one of the most common conversations that come up in one-on-one when I'm working with clients or friends, pretty much friends that become clients, is that this need is so incredibly deep and it's there. I love that you brought that up. And I know that you're being honoring of my time, but I do want to stretch it a little bit and say, because we promoted this as also talking about breastfeeding and bottle feeding and those things, if we want to wrap it up, maybe mentioning that, or if you want to lead us into that portion, I'm of course present for that, of course.
Thank you so much for extending your time so that we can honor that piece a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so I know Elysia said that she is somebody who breastfed for 18 months. I have run across a woman before when I was in my 20s who breastfed her daughter until she was 5. And so I know there's a lot of different thoughts on that. But I've also known women who have tried to breastfeed and they couldn't, like they wanted to, but their child couldn't latch, or their bodies did not literally produce enough milk. And the emotional experience they had, and were sometimes judged by other women in their communities for not being able to breastfeed and then bottle feeding, or they had to go to work and pump and not breastfeed. They're like, there's so much stuff there. So how do we create safe, supportive environments where we can dialogue about those things and just ask questions?
Elysia, may I say something real quick?
Sure.
I had lumps in my breast from nursing too much. That was some problems that came up, and they pump in so much that your breast leaks as you go into work, kind of things. And I was wondering if she can also, while she's answering, talk about some of the nuances that comes with breastfeeding.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. I just honestly don't know how women do it when they have to walk into work. I've been an entrepreneur most of my journey. Did I have and hold corporate positions or in-house with media companies, and worked with like a lot of different brands and TV and whatnot my whole life? I'm very proud of my career, but at the same time, I've never been tied to that classical work where you have to go in after 6 weeks and like pump in the toilet or bathroom like most women have here. In Sweden, where I'm from, that's not the experience. And Sweden, culturally, as I've spoken to earlier, touched on, Elysia, you might have missed that, is that it's a hyper inclusive culture of parents and also paternal rights, and very, very modern. And I think the world can definitely learn a lesson from Sweden. But over here in North American territory, and also probably a lot of other countries, and maybe even countries that can't afford having women take off from the workforce, I think people need to have advocates. We need to have someone appointed in each individual company, particularly maybe at HR, that can be like, there's no shame in this and you don't need to step into the bathroom. Maybe we can create a specific room or have divisors or whatever they're called, dividers, where a woman can sit safely and, you know, produce this milk or pump. It's actually unhealthy for the woman to not express this milk. It could lead to a lot of blocked ducts, a lot of issues, also hormonal release. Like we just, there's this, and also children, they need that milk. It's like golden, nutritious, the most all-encompassing flow of life inside of a woman is actually the breast milk. But I was one of those women that couldn't for as long as I wanted. First of all, due to C-section issues and pain, being on a lot of Western medicine, which I'm usually having issues with because I mentally and emotionally rejected a lot, and I have a hard time integrating it into my body and not wanting to spill that over into my child. This son of mine, I had to wait how long? I think I was exclusive for 3-4 months, and then I started a much more stronger leaning towards the bottle combo feeding, and then at 6 months pretty much we ended it on the date. And I'm still grieving it. He's 8 months. I'm still grieving the fact that I couldn't move. I wanted to feed him for 12 months exclusive, preferably. It's just not a part of my journey. It's not been reality for me. I didn't have to step into an office. I'm working from home. I have a global team. I'm very, very, very lucky to have worked on building my career from home before the world started looking the way it looks like now. But a lot of people still have to step into work. I don't know how they do it. I worked for a woman as a nanny for a very short period of time in my life. Maybe I think it was a 6-month gig where I went in like twice a week, and I have no clue how she did it. During those 2 days a week, I saw all of these glass jars with amazing expressed breast milk, and she would run off into her job in the mornings, and she would work her 8 hours to 10-hour shifts, come home and pump. She would pump in the bathroom stall at work, bring that milk, store it. This is a whole industry, guys.
I did that.
Right?
Yeah, I went back to work after 6 weeks of my surgery, and when I was in the Navy, and was pumping. And you said something really good. If someone in the leadership could be an advocate for moms, it would make a big difference, and it does. And so now I had to go. I found a room. They gave me a room. I was like, no, I'm not going to the bathroom. The bathroom stinks. So they
and also it's not hygienic if you really think about it. It's probably the last place you want to be in dealing with
and
breast
your mental state. Yeah, your mind is like, so your flow won't come unless you relax. And so one of the things that the Navy does now, and I have a classmate who's a high-ranking officer, she build a complete space for moms. And then because I sell soaps, she ordered all these different kits, asked me to make a kit of lotion, soaps, and little oils and stuff for them, and put it in there as an opening ceremony with no names, that she donated it. But when you have the right leadership at work and then the right support at home, it flows. But then when it doesn't happen is when you have to say, okay, I got to be my own advocate.
Right.
Yeah, and I've heard that there are like women who their nipples get so cracked from breastfeeding that it like literally becomes too painful to do that. And just the emotional experience of that too, and like wanting to have that bonding, and or like maybe it's just from the beginning you couldn't produce milk at all, and so you bottle fed your kiddos from like a couple days after birth. And just like creating those boundaries with people that are really healthy, be like, this is my journey with my child, and like if you want to cast judgment, take it somewhere else. But it's not
the mother community has a lot of that toxic judgment. I haven't experienced it personally, but I've read about it on social media that a lot of people that are deep in these mama communities tend to be, it's choose this side or that side kind of thing. But we are entering the middle path of the coin now, and kind of merging both sides, because we have more in common than we do on the opposite end. We have more things to be worried about and bigger enemies to fight than to be like, why aren't you, breastfeeding your kid? Also, the good side of social media is that I do see a lot of campaigning coming out about not judging each other, about normalizing both breastfeeding and bottle feeding and combi feeding or combo. I'm a combo mom, that's what worked for me, and my son's healthy, and I've seen my friend that fed her kids for 2 years. They look amazing as well, healthy, thriving, joyful children. And I've seen babies that were like in the NICU and that were bottle fed, and they're also thriving. So at the end of the day, we're probably the most squeezed demographic in society worldwide. Why spend any time devising ourselves or dividing us further? I think we just need to do these kind of things, have the conversations online, bring about campaigns, maybe lobbying for having somebody that can be our spokesperson at work, making these conversations not only among us as women and or mothers, but with people that are not, such as your employer, such as a man that's far emotionally removed, that doesn't understand that, well, why can't you go to the restroom? I mean, you're going to be there anyway for some personal business. Just take care of it while you're there. Well, here's why.
Yeah, just like here are the healthy conversations, is like, this is how we are able to stand in our own strongly without being reactive or shaming or validating anybody. Be like, I understand that you don't understand, but here are some facts and how I can help you. And then just working to have boundaries. And I know that there are some places where like having boundaries is really difficult. And so it's just it's a practice, it's just like, if you're not perfect at anything in life, it's an opportunity to just like, perfect, quote unquote, whatever, but rather an opportunity for us to be like, hey, like, this is so great. I get to learn something new. I get to practice something. I get to evolve. I get to talk to my friends and find the little quote unquote holes that we all have. All of us have blind spots, no matter what the conversation piece is, because we're just one person that's experienced like whatever we've experienced in life. And there are 8 trillion different things on this planet that other people have experienced that we haven't. And that's the beauty of conversation and holding safe spaces for us to talk about all the different aspects of life.
Agreed. Well put.
Thank you. And so on that, we should probably wrap up. Speaking of work, I have to run back to mine. So my other paying job of like doing massage. But I am working on having us start to fold in onto our Sundays in the group for Sacred Sundays, for us to hold space for parents to be able to have conversations about the things that they're struggling with, the things that they're excited about, the things that they found, finding resources, and maybe holding like an hour a day where it can just be an open forum where women can jump on Sundays around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to be supported and just talk or laugh or bring levity. Like, we all need a little levity and silliness sometimes. So Hengi, Elysia, thank you so much for being on the show today. I so appreciate you. And anybody out there, if you're interested in being on the show or connecting with me for connection coaching, you can find me at www.globalequineaffiliates.com. Jeanette says, thank you. Jeanette, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate having you here in the background. And hopefully we can have you hop on with us maybe next time. Hengi, is there anything else? Any last minute things for you to share?
I'm just super grateful to be here. I love the conversation. Maybe we can set up a collaboration where we do a 1-month intensive something where we just really create a space for people to just show up. We're so disconnected globally. Internet is our only common denominator. So maybe we can take the conversation further. Actually, this really lights me up. It makes me so fucking happy. Seriously.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and for holding that space. And Elysia, for popping up with your amazing story. Inspirational. Thank you, sisters.
Nice to meet you, Hengi.
Likewise. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Right.
I look forward to it. All right, everybody out there, until next time, we will see you later. Bye.
Ciao. Bye.